I'm Patty, the Operations Director here at the Senior Center, and I'm also one of the dementia-friendly coordinators here. So I hope everybody was able to go talk and check out all the awesome vendor tables. I want to thank all of them for coming. I really appreciate everything that they've done this morning, and a lot of them have raffles, which we will be calling after our speaker, Dr. Budson. Dr. Budson will also have a table for book signing after he's done speaking, so just so you know. So what I'd like to do is to introduce our new dementia-friendly coordinator, Vanessa Ramos. Vanessa's over here. So she's been very busy. We're really glad to have her with us. She's involved with our Time to Care Respite program. She's involved with our dementia-friendly action team. We're starting to gear it back up, and we're looking for interested people, including vendors, just letting everybody know. So we have a flyer with a QR code to sign up, or you can just call us or stop by the Senior Center and sign up. Vanessa also has been working hard to update our website, our dementia-friendly website, which is dfworcesterspelledout.org. So please, if you have a chance, go check it out. We're going to be adding more content as we go along. So I think at this time we're going to introduce Julie McMurray. Oh, and Julie's going to be over here because she's using the screen. Julie's the senior manager for the Central Mass Region and Community Outreach for the Alzheimer's Association. That is quite a mouthful, Julie. I hope you don't have to say that all the time. But anyway, she's going to share information about the Alzheimer's Association's facts and figures of 2024. It's really important and really good information. So thank you, Julie. She's going to take over from here.
So as you can see, there are just under 7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's, and that number will only increase without the research that is being done. But there are populations that are at higher risk for developing Alzheimer's disease and other dementia. Black Americans are about twice as likely as white Americans to have Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. Hispanic Americans are 1.5 times as likely to have dementia as white Americans, and almost 2/3 of Americans living with Alzheimer's are women. But we want to let you know that you are not alone. The Alzheimer's Association is a nationwide organization, and we are here for you. I want to just highlight a couple of the resources that we provide at the Alzheimer's Association. We have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helpline that is accessible every day, all day. Whether you call at 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, you will speak to somebody, and you will be provided with information, support, and this is provided to people living with Alzheimer's disease, their families, caregivers, and the general public, and it is confidential as well as free. We also offer a variety of education programs in the communities, virtually and online. And these programs range in a lot of different topics, and I have a flyer that highlights all of our educational programs, but we offer a lot of support groups for people living with Alzheimer's disease and their families, and they are facilitated by wonderful volunteers. But we want to make sure you know that we are here for you. And I am able to do the work that I do because of the Walk to End Alzheimer's, which is our largest public awareness and largest fundraiser to provide and raise funds to accelerate research efforts, provide education programs, and there's a walk in 600 communities throughout the United States. And locally, we have a Walk to End Alzheimer's right here in Worcester on Sunday, October 6th. And it is a wonderful way to come together and build a sense of community And we are all there to really create a world without Alzheimer's and dementia. So feel free to stop by my resource table, and if you have any questions after, I will be there. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Janet Price. I know see a lot of familiar faces here today. I've been doing blood pressure screenings and helping people with their medication questions for the last 6 months or so. And to all those I haven't met yet, welcome to the Senior Center on behalf of the Department of Public Health, who's helping with this program today, and the Senior Center. I'm here to introduce our lecture for today on why we forget and steps to managing memory, Alzheimer's disease, and dementia. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Andrew Budson, who's going to discuss three of his publications. He has a guide for families called 6 Steps to Managing Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia. And this includes managing issues with memory, language, vision, behavior, driving, incontinence, sleep, and more. Then, based on the second edition of his award-winning book, 7 Steps to Managing Your Aging Memory, he's also going to explain how individuals can distinguish changes in memory due to Alzheimer's versus normal aging, what medications, diets, and exercise regimens can help, and the best habit strategies and memory aids to use in 7 simple steps. Lastly, he will share some tips and tricks and techniques that everyone, young and old, can use to improve their memory based on his 2023 book, Why We Forget and How to Remember Better. Educated at Haverford College and Harvard Medical School, Dr. Budson is currently the Chief of Cognitive Behavioral Neurology at the VA Boston Healthcare System. He's Associate Director of the Boston University Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, Professor of Neurology at Boston University, and Lecturer in Neurology at Harvard Medical School. I could not remember all of that without the she, Dr. Budson. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Budson today.
Okay, so it really is a great pleasure to be here and to see so many of you. I feel we finally moved into the post-pandemic world now that we're here and we're all back out together. So I am going to talk about these 3 different books, and I'm going to talk about this one first. This is 7 Steps to Managing Your Aging Memory. And I wrote this book because there were so many patients who would walk into my clinic and they would say, you know, doctor, I've had these memory problems for 3 years, but I went to my doctor 3 years ago and he said, oh, don't worry, Mrs. Jones. Everyone your age has these types of memory problems. It's normal. Don't worry about it. And so we wrote this book, my colleague and I, Dr. Maureen O'Connor, to let people know what's normal in your memory as you get older, what's not, and most importantly, what to do about it. And then the next book I wrote was for families whose loved ones are really in the midst of dementia, and they need to be able to care for them. And I can talk to people in my office for up to an hour, but I really would need to talk to them for 10 hours or 100 hours to tell them everything that I would really like to share with them about how to help your loved ones with dementia and how to help yourself. So that was when, with the same co-author, I wrote this second book, 6 Steps to Managing Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia, a Guide for Families. And then finally, with a different co-author, Dr. Elizabeth Kensinger, we wrote this book here, Why We Forget and How to Remember Better, the Science Behind Memory. And this is a book that's basically for everybody. So this book, we do talk about Alzheimer's and we talk about dementia, but it's just a small part of the book. In this book, we talk about what are the different kinds of memory, how does the brain enable these different types of memory, and how, by understanding how memory works, how can you remember things better? So that's this book here. And so we're going to talk about all of these books today. And I'm going to begin by getting your views on some common memory scenarios. I'm going to actually read a little bit from the preface of the 7 Steps to Managing Your Aging Memory books. And as I read off each of these memory scenarios, if you say to yourself, well, this is just normal, this is what happens as your memory gets older, I want you to give me a thumbs up to say, yes, that's just normal. If, on the other hand, you say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound normal, that sounds like it could be the beginning of Alzheimer's disease or dementia, give me a thumbs down to say, no, that does not sound normal. So here's the first scenario. So you walk into a room to get something, and you forget why you're there. Is that normal, thumbs up, or abnormal, thumbs down? All right, I want to see a big thumbs up from everyone here. That one is normal. Thank God, right? If that one wasn't normal, we would all be in big trouble. Okay, how about this one? You're having trouble remembering some of the details of your life, such as your wedding. What do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Getting a lot of thumbs down on that one. How about this one? When you are driving and not paying attention, you take one or more wrong turns and you end up somewhere you did not intend to be. Oh, I got a split decision. Some people say that's good. Some people say that's bad. This woman's flipping her thumb up and down. She's not quite sure. All right, how about this one? You have difficulty finding your car in a parking lot. Is that one normal? I think everyone's like, I hope that one's normal, right? Or how about my favorite one here? Your family tells you that you've asked that question before. Is that normal or not? I got another split decision here. Some people say yes, some people say no. So the answers to all those questions, we'll go over some of them right now, but they're all in the book here. So I want to tell you a little bit about how it is that the memory changes in normal aging and then how it changes in Alzheimer's afterwards. So the first thing I want to introduce you to is actually a part of your brain. This part of your brain is your frontal lobes, right behind your forehead. And the frontal lobes do a lot of different things, but one of the things that the frontal lobes do is your frontal lobe acts like your builder to build a memory. So let's say there's an episode of your life such as us all meeting together here. So what has to happen is your builder actually is constructing this memory. So it's actually walks over, it constructs the memory, okay? So we have a little memory construction. And then another part of your brain called the hippocampus comes over and it makes a quick sketch of this. So it makes a little sketch or a little blueprint of the memory, okay? And then it gets filed away, just like this, into another part of the hippocampus. So the builder, your frontal lobe, is what's actively helping to record this memory and form this memory. Now, that's good, but as we all get older, our frontal lobe builder is getting older too. And one thing that happens to our older frontal lobe builder is they do not hear quite as well as they used to. What? And because of that, in normal aging, information may need to be repeated a couple of times in order for the builder to get a hold of it and build the memory. Another thing that happens to our older builder is they do not move quite as quickly as they used to. And because of that, as part of normal aging, it may take a little bit of time in order for the builder to walk over to the hippocampus, go into that file cabinet, and retrieve the blueprint. Now, the third thing that happens to our older builder is they don't see quite as well as they used to. And you can imagine that as they're squinting at the blueprint because they have to be able to look at the blueprint and see how everything is in order to reconstruct the memory, they may need a hint or a cue. Say, oh, that's what that is there, in order to reconstruct the memory. But importantly, in normal aging, as long as the information got down on the blueprint, the memory should be able to be retrieved, even if it takes a little bit of time or a hint or a cue. So those are the three changes that we expect to see in normal aging. Now, the problem in Alzheimer's disease is not the frontal lobe builder, but it's actually a different structure. It's that hippocampus that we were talking about. That's the part of the memory that creates that sketch or that blueprint and files it away. And the problem in Alzheimer's disease is that it's actually damaging and ultimately destroying the hippocampus. And the way I think about it, it's as if there's actually a hole in the bottom of the file drawer where all these blueprints are supposed to be stored. Well, if there's a hole in the bottom of the file drawer, you can have that sketch being made all day and put into the drawer, but what's going to happen? It's going to disappear down the hole, never to be seen again. And so then the frontal lobes, the builder can come over and try to put together the building, but it just can't do it because it can't find the blueprint to know how it should be reconstructed. So that's the basic problem with Alzheimer's, and we call that rapid forgetting because the information is rapidly forgotten. And rapid forgetting is never normal. It should always be evaluated. Now let's talk about some of the other problems that can happen in Alzheimer's, and one of those is getting lost. Now, anybody of any age can get lost. You make a wrong turn, something doesn't look familiar, bam, you're lost. But what do we all normally do? Well, you can pull out a map from your glove compartment if you're old school. This day and age, more likely from your phone. You can use a GPS device, or you can pull over and ask for directions. And using any of those methods, you're back on your way. But in Alzheimer's, paper maps and phone apps can be complicated and confusing to use. You can pull over and ask for directions, but they're often long and detailed and hard to remember. And this is the reason that so many people with Alzheimer's disease have such trouble getting lost. Now let's talk about another thing that's common in Alzheimer's, which is losing things, misplacing things. But misplacing things is also very common for anyone of any age. Now I want you to raise your hand if in the last year you have misplaced your keys, glasses, wallet, pocketbook, cell phone. Has that happened to anybody? Yeah, me too. So if you're losing things, if you're misplacing things, how do you know if it's normal or if it's not normal. Well, look, if you're someone who every morning, all your life, you spend 5, 10, 15 minutes, hunting around the house looking for things, and now you're getting a little bit older, and you're still spending 5, 10, 15 minutes hunting around the house looking for things. Well, that's probably normal for you and not something to worry about. But if you were someone who was always very organized, always knew exactly where everything was, and now you're spending not only 5, 10, 15 minutes, but maybe 20 minutes or an hour. Maybe you had to buy a new cell phone because it never did turn up. Maybe you had to cancel the credit cards because you never could find that wallet. Well, that could be a problem. So the point I'm trying to make here is it's not only what the problem is, but also whether it represents a change from the way things used to be. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is about repeating questions and stories. Now, anybody can be halfway through telling a story to a close friend and say, "Oh my God, I told you that already, didn't I?" And anybody can forget the answer to a question and ask it again. But when there is a pattern of repeatedly asking the same questions over and over and over again, or repeatedly telling the same story to the same people again and again and again, that is not normal. That's usually due to that rapid forgetting that we were talking about. And as I mentioned, rapid forgetting is never normal. It should always be evaluated. Okay, so some of the other things that we talk about in the book are some of the new advances in the field of medications. And this is actually one of the most exciting times in the field of Alzheimer's disease. Now, when I finished my neurology residency and began my fellowship, that was 1997. That was the year that the medication donepezil, the other name for that is Aricept, was first FDA approved. And this class of medications is a really good medication for most people with Alzheimer's or with vascular dementia or with dementia with Lewy bodies. And what this medication can do is, by boosting up a chemical in the brain called acetylcholine, it can actually turn the clock back on memory loss by 6 to 12 months. And that's really good. And most of my patients with those disorders are taking that medication. The only downside of this medicine, or limitation I should say, is that it cannot slow down or stop that ticking clock. In fact, it can't even change the rate at which the clock ticks down. Now, people are still going to be 6 to 12 months better off being on this medicine than not on it, okay? But it can't stop that clock from ticking down. So fast forward now to 2023, last year, we have a new medication available. And this is a medication that can actually slow down that ticking clock. So this is a real breakthrough. This is a medication called lecanemab. The other name for this is Leqembi. And this is a medication that's given through an intravenous infusion every other week. And what it does is it uses an antibody to actually remove the Alzheimer's plaques from the brain. So this is a huge, big advance. We can now remove the plaques from the brain and slow down the decline that we see in Alzheimer's disease. So it's a real breakthrough. Now, unfortunately, not everyone is eligible for this medication. And one of the most important take-home messages I want you to all leave here today with is that this is a medication that people need to take in the very earliest stages of Alzheimer's disease. So if you are wondering, you know, should I go to my doctor now or take my loved one to my doctor now, or should I just wait? You know, let's see how it goes. You know, there's no rush. Well, if you wait too long, you won't be eligible for this medication. This is a medication we have to catch early, because if we're going to change the slope of the decline and make the decline more gradual, we need to start early, because that's what makes a big difference. So, after talking about medications in this book, we then talk a little bit about lifestyle changes. And it turns out that these lifestyle changes make a big difference. There was an article published in a good journal by the World Health Association that estimates approximately 40% of dementia can be prevented through lifestyle changes alone. And we're going to talk about two of the most important ones. We're going to talk about diet and exercise. So there's actually thousands of studies now that show that eating a Mediterranean menu of food tends to be the healthiest menu of foods. And especially if it's whole foods, foods that are relatively unprocessed. So this includes fish, olive oil, avocados, fruits and vegetables, nuts and beans, and whole grains. And from a sister diet that's also been studied, we can add chicken to this list. So these are the things that are good to eat. So some of you are probably wondering, okay, well, what are the things that are not good to eat? Well, I hate to tell you, it's almost everything else. So red meats, fried foods, fatty foods, butter and margarine, pastries and most sweets, sugar sodas, sugar juices, diet sodas, diet juices, white bread, white flour, white rice. All of those things I would put in the category of once in a while foods, not every single day foods. All right, now before everybody gets depressed and thinks, oh my God, I can never have dessert again, I did want to let you know that chocolate in small amounts has been shown to benefit thinking and memory and mood. Yay! You just have to remember that it's what type of chocolate? Dark chocolate, right. The darker the better, because it's not the sugar and butter and milk that's put in it to make it sweet and creamy, but the cocoa, that's the part that's good for you. Okay, so the last thing that we talk about in the 7 steps to managing your aging memory are different strategies and memory aids that are perfect for people to use as they're getting older to keep their memory strong. So, we're now going to switch gears and talk a little bit about this book here, 6 Steps to Managing Alzheimer's Disease and Dementia, a Guide for Families. And I'm going to start with the most common question that I get asked, and I actually heard one of you whisper it to another one right here today, which is, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? So dementia is simply a general term that means thinking and memory has deteriorated to the point that it interferes with day-to-day function. And the way I think about this general term dementia is the way I think about another general term like a headache. Now, a headache can be caused by a lot of different things. You could have a muscle tension headache or a migraine headache, neither of which are very serious. But you could also have a headache from something that is serious, like a stroke or a brain tumor. And with dementia, it's the same way. You can actually have dementia from something as treatable and curable as a vitamin deficiency or a thyroid disorder. But you can also have dementia from a variety of different brain diseases, including Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, vascular dementia, and there's many other types as well. So dementia is the general category, and Alzheimer's is one type or one kind of dementia. Get it? Okay. All right. So that is the beginning of the first part of that 6 steps book, where the first step is understand dementia. The second step is manage problems. And we begin with ways to manage general problems that come up in dementia. And then we have a chapter each for all sorts of specific problems, like managing memory problems, managing language problems, managing vision problems, and of course, managing behavior problems and problems with function. So I'm going to actually spend a minute teaching you all some of the general strategies that you can use to manage problems. And the first one that I want to teach you is called the 4 R's. So let's say we have a scenario where your loved one is trying to leave the house. They're trying to go home. And let's say they're over here, and let's pretend this is a door here. And they're sort of rattling the door. They're trying to open the door, which you have cleverly locked, and they're trying to leave the house. And we might all feel like saying, you know, honey, you're already home. Stop doing that and come over here and watch TV, you know. But that's probably not going to work and isn't always the best approach. So you want to pull out the 4 R's. You want to reassure your loved one that everything is okay. You want to reconsider things from their point of view. Because from their point of view, they don't remember that they are in their current house. They may think that they're living in the house they lived, you know, the last time they moved, or maybe the house that they grew up in as a child. You also want to redirect them to things that are both calming and distracting. Maybe it's listening to some music. Maybe it's looking through an old picture album. Maybe it's getting a little bit of food. Can be whatever you can think of at the time that's calming and distracting. And then the 4th R is for all of us caregivers to take in a deep breath and relax. Because if we are upset and frustrated and irritated, we are going to reflect that emotion back to our loved one. So those are the 4 R's. Now, another general strategy that can work to manage stubbornness or willfulness, we call start with small steps. So let's say that it's time for Dad to take a bath. And Dad's like, I don't want to take a bath. I had a bath last month. You're like, yes, Dad, I know. That's why we need to get you into the bath. I don't want to take a bath. So in this situation, I recommend starting with small steps. You say, okay, Dad, fine. But look, you got a little bit of dirt on your nose. Can I just clean this dirt off your nose? And look, there's some dirt on your cheek. Let me just wipe that off. And there's some on your neck. And, oh, look, I've got your shirt wet. Let's just get this shirt off so I don't get it wet. And hopefully, as you continue with these small steps, you've got Dad undressed and into the bathtub. The third general strategy that I want to share with you, we call the ABCs, and it stands for antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. And this is when those sort of in-the-moment solutions don't actually work. The 4 R's, the small steps, it's more complicated than that. So you want to try to quantify what's going on. So not only is the behavior that Dad doesn't want to take a bath or that your loved one's trying to leave the house, you want to write down how often this is going on. Is it happening every day, several times a day, or just once or twice a week? So you want to quantify it. How often is it occurring? And how long is it going on when it occurs? Is it lasting just for a minute or two, or is, your loved one rattling the door for an hour? So you want to quantify this information. So you want to quantify the behavior. You also want to look at what came before. So for example, are these behaviors always coming at night in the evenings? So maybe this is part of sundowning. Maybe that's what's going on. Is it related to mealtime? Maybe your loved one is getting irritable and angry because they're hungry, right? You want to look at the antecedents, what came before. But we also want to look at the consequences. And this may seem a little bit strange, that in order to try to understand a behavior, why do we need to think about what happened after the behavior? Why do we need to think about the consequences? Well, let me give you an example. So let's say we're in the same situation as last time, that we're trying to give Dad a bath. And Dad's like, I don't want a bath, I don't want a bath, I don't want a bath. And he's stamping his feet and he's yelling and screaming and waving his arms. And you say, all right, Dad, fine, let's skip the bath for today. What did we just do? Right. We have taught Dad that if he yells and screams and stomps his feet long enough, loud enough, strong enough, he can get out of something that he doesn't want to do. So sometimes the consequences are important to pay attention to as well. So that's a taste of the managed behaviors section in here. Then we talk, the next section is ask about medications, and we talk about medications that can be helpful, but we also talk about all the medications that can be harmful, and we list them all off in both the generic name and in the brand name. So you can look through the list of medications to find which medicines your loved one may be on that may actually be contributing to some of their confusion or some of their behavior problems. We then talk about how to build your care team, how to sustain your relationship, and how to plan for the future. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about the last book, my most recent book, Why We Forget and How to Remember Better, the Science Behind Memory. And I want to again go through the preface and talk about some of these little statements about memory, now that you're all becoming memory experts. I want you to, as I read off each of these statements, if you think this statement is correct, I want you to give me a thumbs up. If you think this statement is wrong, I want you to give me a thumbs down. Here's the first one. My memory works like a video recorder. I record the information in through my eyes and ears and then play the recording back in my head when I want to remember something. What do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? So we have a split decision. Some people say yes, some people say no. So here's the next one. Memory evolved to remember information. So when we forget things, it is a weakness of the system. Thumbs up or thumbs down? You don't understand the question. I will read it again. Memory evolved to remember information. So when we forget things, it is a weakness of our system. Okay, people aren't sure about that one. How about this one? If someone can remember their childhood in vivid detail, they cannot be suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Got a lot of thumbs down on that one. How about this one here? If someone can play a musical instrument from memory without sheet music, they don't have dementia. Another thumbs down on that one. How about this one here? When preparing for an exam, highlighting and rereading important information is the best method of studying. Most people think that one sounds pretty good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about memory. So the first thing I want to tell you that we go over in detail in this book is that memory is actually not one thing. Memory is actually a collection of different abilities. And one of the types of memory that I'm going to talk about right now is called procedural memory. This is memory for skills and habits and routines. So, for example, riding a bicycle is an example of procedural memory. Typing on a computer or using your thumbs or fingers to type on a phone is an example of procedural memory, as is tying your shoelaces. And in fact, I had an experience when I was teaching my daughter, who is now 27. I was teaching her how to tie her shoes at age 6. And I said, okay, Leia, so what you want to do, you want to put one lace over the other, and then you want to pull it through, and then you want to, and I realized that I did not remember how to tie my own shoes. And I had to untie my shoelaces and watch what I was doing as I tied them. And the reason that that happened to me is because procedural memory is allowing me to do it without thinking about it. Just like we can all, for example, drive a car while we're thinking about something else or having a conversation with our friends. Procedural memory actually happens unconsciously most of the time, except when we're learning things. That's when we have to use our conscious mind to pay attention. Now, one of the reasons this is interesting and valuable to know is it turns out there's different parts of the brain that are involved with procedural memory than with ordinary memory, which we call episodic memory. So procedural memory, it turns out, is a structure called the basal ganglia that's particularly important. And that's deep inside the brain, and it's what's disrupted in Parkinson's disease. So if anyone knows anyone with Parkinson's disease, they often have trouble with learning new habits and routines, things like that. Okay, now, we next go into great detail about episodic memory, memory for episodes of our life. And so this includes understanding more, for example, about what the left brain and the right brain do together. So it turns out that the left brain is actually specialized for verbal information, for names and facts and things like that. The right brain is more specialized for music and images and pictures and things like that. We also now know a lot about how sleep is important for memory. And sleep is actually important for all sorts of different types of memory. So we were talking recently, just a minute ago, about the procedural memory. And one part of procedural memory would be, for example, practicing basketball, let's say practicing free throws. So let me ask you a question. Is it better to practice all at once and really concentrate on something? So for example, practicing your free throws for 7 hours at once on a Saturday? Or is it better to split your practice up? So you practice your free throws 1 hour each day, 1 day each week. So raise your hand if you think it's better to do it all on a Saturday. Raise your hand if you think it's better to do 1 hour each day. Well, you are all correct. It's much better to do it for 1 hour each day, because it turns out that while we're sleeping, it actually gets strengthened. We actually remember it better when we sleep. And a lot of professional athletes now know this, and they really prioritize their sleep because it will help them to perform better. Sleep is also critically important for episodic memories, for memories for episodes of our life. So, for example, when we go to sleep, what happens is the hippocampus and the frontal lobes actually turn on. And those sketches that the hippocampus made, they start to be replayed in our mind. And our frontal lobe builder, while we're sleeping, is rebuilding the memories of things that happened during the day or the last couple of days or so. So this is one of the reasons that when you dream, you may be aware that your dream is related to what happened during the day. And this goes on during non-REM sleep. So it turns out we used to think we only had dreaming during REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, but we actually have dreams in other stages of sleep as well. And when this blueprint is being activated and the builder is rebuilding, that's going on in non-REM sleep. It's during REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, that the construction that's being built is compared to every other construction and every other blueprint that's going on in your life. So for example, this is compared to other memories that you've had, other autobiographical information, other memories of your life. It's also being compared to facts and knowledge that you know. It's all being compared. And this is one of the reasons that dreams can seem completely strange and bizarre and fantastical. It's because of these linkages that our brain is making between what happened to us over the last day or the last week with everything else. And we actually believe that our dreams are really us simply being aware of this process. So we've wondered for thousands of years what dreams are for, why do we have dreams? And I think we now have the answer. Our dreaming is simply us being aware of this process known as consolidation, when our memories go from a short-term temporary store to a long-term permanent store that gets connected to all of our other facts and knowledge. Okay, well, you are all becoming real experts in memory, and I want to give you another memory test here. I want you to all remember a list of the following words. Now, those of you with a pen or a pencil in your hand, please put it down. Okay, so here are the words: candy, sour, sugar, bitter, good, taste, tooth, nice, honey, soda, chocolate, heart, cake, eat, and pie. Easy, right? You can remember all those. Okay, raise your hand if you remember the word sugar on that list. Raise your hand if you remember the word flag on that list. Raise your hand if you remember the word sweet on that list. So sweet was not on that list. Now, what I really like about this little test is it tells us a lot about how our memory works. I think we all have the intuition that our memory works like a video camera, that we record the information in when we're remembering it and we play it back when we retrieve it. But that's not actually what happens. Instead, what happens is that the information is boiled down to its core essence or its gist. And it's this gist or core essence that gets expanded to all the individual items. And this is actually one of the most important primary functions of memory, because memory did not actually evolve to remember things per se, because it's only important to remember past information if it helps us understand the present moment or it helps us to plan for the future. Okay? So that is what memory is for. Memory is not to remember information verbatim. It's to be able to use prior information to help us understand what's going on now and plan for the future. And finally, I want to talk about why we forget. So the reason that we forget is it isn't helpful to remember all the individual instances when we're trying to plan, for example, how long will it take us to get to the Worcester Senior Center, right? What time should we leave to get there on time? It's not helpful to remember the 30 or 300 individual instances that we've traveled here. It's much more helpful to remember the core essence or the gist of those episodes and actually to let our brains forget all the individual times. So the question is, what about brain fog? So brain fog is a term that's not a medical or a scientific term, but it's a term I think we all know what it means. It's basically when your thinking and memory aren't sharp. Now, brain fog can be caused by a lot of different things. You might have a fever or an infection, and your thinking and memory are not clear. So that's one example of brain fog. You may be recovering from an infection, such as COVID or the flu, and your thinking and memory are not clear. You may have been started on a new medication, and it's making your thinking and memory fuzzy. So all of those would be examples of brain fog. And hopefully the brain fog will go away. It may go away quickly if it was, say, a brief infection, or maybe you got hospitalized for something and your brain was foggy for a couple of days. Hopefully it goes away soon. If it doesn't go away soon, you know, in a week or so, I definitely would talk to your doctor and see if they can help you understand what's causing the brain fog and what can be done to treat it and make it better. Someone wants to know, how do you remember things better? So I'm going to give you 4 things to do to remember information better. And they are in an acronym. So they begin with the letters F-O-U-R to help you remember them, okay? The first thing you want to do is you want to focus your attention. So that's the F. Focus your attention on whatever it is you're trying to remember. So if you are a student studying for school, you want to focus on the material. If you are just trying to remember an event like what we're doing right now, you want to focus your attention on whatever it is you want to remember from the event, whether it's the people, the scintillating information the speaker gave you, or whatever it is. The second part is the O, which is organize the information in your mind or on paper to help you remember it better. So if you're a student and you're studying, you want to organize the material that you're trying to remember. If you are just trying to remember an event like this, you know, organize it. Think about it. Okay, I remembered these different people. I want to remember the information from the speaker. I want to remember the different materials from the tables. You know, whatever it is, work on remembering those different things. The U is understand. You want to make sure you understand whatever it is you're learning. Now, this is particularly important for students. Make sure they understand the material. If they don't understand it deeply, they're not going to be able to remember it. And the R, the last one, is relate the material you're learning or the event in your life to things that you already know or to other events in your life. So if you use those 4 things, it will help you remember better. And if you want literally 100 additional tips, it's in this book here. Okay, so I want to thank you all. And like I said, so I'm going to be setting up for book signing. After the book signing, if there's other people who have individual questions, I'm happy to answer those as well. So thanks very much.